All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on another episode here with, we're talking border stuff. And we're here at the Federation for American Immigration Reform. And we've got a great guest today. I love guests that are sheriffs. And we've got one today. We've got not just a sheriff, but a congressman sheriff. I don't think you ever you never lose the moniker of sheriff,
no,
right?
No, they call me sheriff up here, and I appreciate that.
And we always do, we do lineups in law enforcement, so I think that's a match.
That's me.
Now, you're from Florida, District 5, correct?
Right.
Congressional
Jacksonville and St. Augustine.
And you're in your fourth term?
Fourth term, going into my fifth.
Excellent. Thank you for your service.
And so it's an honor to serve Northeast Florida. I've done it for over 50 years now. I was with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for 41 years, 12 as sheriff, as you know, and now 8 in Congress.
That's pretty impressive. Not a lot of sheriffs actually do their whole career in the agency and then become the sheriff as well.
In one agency. Started out as a patrolman riding a beat and went through every civil service rank and every appointed rank and then ran for sheriff.
Now, one thing I find interesting, and I know we're going to get into a lot of questions, but one thing I find interesting about Jacksonville is when I was reading about it, it's Duval County.
Right.
But it's the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
Yes, good pickup. It's a consolidated government in 1968. We made the city and the county one. And at that time, they put all of public safety services under the elected sheriff. And so the sheriff runs courts, corrections, civil process, and all of the police. So it's really, I think, as I mentioned earlier, this is one of the best delivery methods for public safety services I think I've ever seen.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I've often talked about how you get the sheriff's offices, their ability to be able to be autonomous and be able to do the things that they need to do without dealing with the city council. You kind of got the best of both worlds there in Duval County or Jacksonville.
And look, I my budget was, I created my budget. I presented it to the mayor, who put it in his city budget, and then that went to the city council. And I could lobby both sides. And so it gave me a tremendous amount of political influence in the city because I could really stand up and fight for public safety. And that's why by 2011, Jacksonville had the lowest violent crime and lowest murder numbers we'd had in over 41 years. And the city was almost twice or almost 3 times the size.
Yeah.
But that, when I tell places that are looking at consolidation, put it under an elected sheriff, not an appointed chief. Mm. Elected sheriffs work for the people. Appointed chiefs work for a mayor, a city council, or some appointing body.
And I think that's what enables us to be able to go out and have these huge reductions in crime. And you did an amazing job. I saw some of those numbers that you had and what you did. And you were 12 years as sheriff. Then you took a step down and went to Congress, right?
Yeah,
now 4 terms, going into your 5th term. And I know we're going to talk a lot about border immigration and how it relates to the Congress piece of what you're doing now. Yeah. But first and foremost, thank you for your good service as a sheriff.
Well, thank you, Sheriff. And let me say this, because I didn't step down to run for Congress. I was term limited as sheriff because I fell under the city charter. And so the city charter had brought in term limits back in the 90s.
You've got to be one of the only counties in the state of Florida that has the term limits.
Exactly. It is. It actually is.
Wow.
And so I was term limited out after 41 years doing what I loved every day. And, I'm sitting at home, now what am I going to do? Lord, what do you want me to do now?
Well, it shows your servant's heart.
And, and so... my predecessor in Congress, who was a dear friend and known him for a long time, out of the blue, he decided to retire. And because I had been legislative chair for the Florida Sheriff's Association for nine of my 12 years as sheriff. They're like, you need to run. I'm like, okay. I'll
Were you
do
like,
that.
no?
That's a great way to
You're thinking
serve, but.
you must not be talking about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, politics is not, we get it a little bit of as sheriffs, and then you take it, and then you go into Congress, and, but we need people like you. I've always said, we need more cowboy hats and belt buckles. We need more sheriffs in Washington. And
Well, we've got 3 in Congress now.
I know, Troy,
Troy,
Congressman Nels, and
yep.
then you, and who's the third one?
Ezel.
Okay.
Ezel.
Well,
From Mississippi.
we could use a lot more.
Yeah.
We could use a lot more.
Absolutely.
So now you're on the House Appropriations, House Ethics Committees?
Right.
Okay, and then I know there's a bunch of subcommittees under there.
Yep.
And I know you're dealing with a lot of appropriations. You're probably dealing with a lot of these issues that we're dealing with. We're going to jump into these questions because I know you're a busy man and you've got a lot to do. And we're getting in. These are some exciting times, to be honest with you. We're getting out from underneath some really dark clouds, and I see some light at the end of the tunnel. And I know we briefly talked about it before we jumped on air, and you guys seem to be pretty excited about what the future holds too.
I think there's a lot of good things on the horizon.
I agree.
Yep.
Now let's jump into the border.
Securing the border is one of them.
Yeah. Well, we need to, because from 21 to
Amen.
25, these things, over the last 4 years, these numbers have been, I'm not right on the border. I'm one county off, but we deal with it all the time. We deal with it in the desert. We deal with it on the highways. We have an Indian reservation, so they come right in. And what we saw from 2021 to now have just been astronomically high numbers.
Yeah.
Some of those numbers are 56,000 criminal aliens being apprehended. One of the ones that I think they talk about in the media, which is 400 or more people that have been that are on the terrorist watch list that have been caught. But one of the biggest things that we see in the Tucson sector, which is always leads the way, there's been over 2 million gotaways.
Right.
And those are the ones that are known gotaways. I've always said those numbers are probably, that's what the government's telling us.
More than that. Yeah, those are the ones that they can see on the ATS video walking by.
Yeah. What are the policies you think from the Biden-Harris administration that really contributed to these crazy numbers, especially when we talk about the gotaways?
Sheriff, I'm going to tell you, early on in the Biden administration, I heard people say, this policy is broken. And I'm like, no, you have to understand, this is their policy. Open borders is their policy. They're not inept. They're not bumbling. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose. That's why on day one, they did away with the migrant protection protocols, the Remain in Mexico, let all those people come through. All of those from, I think 158 nations now that they've all come from. Those with the MPP, we used to reject those, and they had to remain in Mexico while they applied for their asylum. They don't do that anymore. They wiped that out first day. They did away with Title 42, which we used to keep people out of the country who were from Mexico, Central America, South America. You could use it for those folks to keep them out of the country and keep our health system strong. And then also they reinstituted catch and release, which was horrible. They took alternatives to detention, which is where they don't detain you as the law says. The law says you will be detained during your asylum process. Well, what they do is they've developed this alternatives to detention, and they put you on an ankle bracelet and send you to the interior of the country, and then 2 weeks later they let you take it off. What is that about? And here's the real problem. You mentioned the 400 known terrorists that we've let in on the terrorist watch list. The 2 million gotaways. Even the people that are coming in, Sheriff, they don't vet them.
No.
They don't vet them. Let me give you an example. There was a guy, his real name was Ulloa, he used a fake name, Fernandez, to come across the border as a juvenile because of catch and release, right? And so that threw him under catch and release. So CBP, they turned him over to HHS. They can't figure out who he is, so they ask him, do you have a family member in America? He's like, yeah, my Uncle Cuellar lives in Jacksonville. So they call Uncle Cuellar. Oh yeah, that's my nephew. Send him on out. So we fly him from, I forget where he crossed at illegally, but we fly him from Texas to Jacksonville. He kills Mr. Cuellar. Over remittances, I believe.
Right.
Because in fact, I suspect, and the reason I really looked hard into this case was I was at home and saw in the local media, they were interviewing the victim's daughter, who said, you know, my father loved to help these people. I'm like, wait a minute, this ain't about helping people. These are supposed to be family members,
Right.
that you're turning these kids over to. Well, it turned out Ulloa wasn't a kid anyway. He was like 23 or 24. But it was clearly already set up because Cuellar says, yeah, that's my nephew. Well, he knew it wasn't his nephew. Then they fly him out there and he kills him. Now, I think it was, probably over remittances, not going back to the cartel like they were supposed to, for all these other people that were being helped. And
That's a perfect story.
And that's happening all over the country.
Yeah. I don't think the American people realize, and that story is a perfect illustration of how savvy the cartels are, these transnational criminal organizations, to say, hey, we need you to pretend to be a juvenile, to go across, request to go see this guy, and he shows up, and basically we paid to transport a Sicario to the guy's house to kill him.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does illustrate. And I just one more, I know.
And now he's in Florida State Prison doing 60 years.
And we're paying for it the whole time.
And we're paying for it the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of money that we've put out, and I know you kind of hit on about 4 of the questions that we already had. One of the things that I want to talk to you about, we talk about all these people coming in, the CBP One app, all these folks claiming asylum. What you explained the Remain in Mexico program. Now that's not happening, so they're here in the country. The court docket has gone from 3.6 million to well over 7 million people in a court docket.
Yes. You know the numbers well.
Yeah.
That's right. Over 7 million.
How do we deal with that, Congressman?
Well,
how does it affect Florida? I imagine a lot of these are probably, Florida's probably got a line.
We have over 1 million. We have over 1 million just in Florida. We're spending over $6 billion a year on them. So
$6 billion of taxpayer dollars.
Yes, the country's spending over $100 billion. Over $100 billion.
And not to mention, I know the lost tax revenue. I remember when you go back to President Trump's first administration, when he talked about building the wall, what a lot of people overlook is they were worried about a $5 billion bill, but they were overestimating, or underestimating, I should say, that they were estimating a loss of $130 billion of lost tax revenue for people that were working in the country illegally, not paying taxes.
Right.
So not only is there a direct cost, there's also an indirect cost of lost tax revenue.
Now, I will tell you, Sheriff, you just touched on something that I think is critically important that we look at. We did it for the drug cartels when they were mainly running just drugs. Now they're running people and everything else. But and that is remittances going back to Mexico and other Central and South American countries. Now, we blacklisted several banks who could not receive remittances from America because we knew they were being run by the cartels, and that worked. That hurt because it's hard to mule millions of dollars south across the border. You know that.
Oh, we know it.
Being a border county or close. You know how important that is? Those electronic wire transfers make it so easy for them.
Yeah.
So let's stop that for these immigrants, just like we did for the drugs. Now, we don't have to stop all of it, but let's control it so that we know that we're not sending remittances back to the Sinaloa cartel, for
Which
example.
is what's happening.
Yeah, which is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
And so if we would get control of the remittances, it's all about the money.
Such a great
It's all
point.
about the money.
We would kit loads of $250,000, $500,000, and then it just dropped off. It got down to where it's small amounts of money, if
Yep.
that.
Yep.
They were putting it on gift cards. They were doing all sorts of things, but a
Yeah.
lot of it was being done right through remittances,
Yeah.
right back to the cartels.
Yep. Electronic wire transfer. They love it.
Yeah.
We,
Now
ought, to, we ought to stop it.
You touched briefly on the Alternatives to Detention program. Most people don't realize there's not a lot of ICE beds, actual, ICE facilities, government facilities. They actually contract out with a lot of sheriff's offices in different
They do.
places.
I housed them in my jail for a long time.
And a lot of the reasons why they're not housing people and they're doing these alternatives to detention is because they don't have the bed space. Do you foresee a change in how Congress is going to view this moving forward, especially with the new administration's push to remove the people that don't belong here?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, this was a funny story. So in 2017, I did a tour of the border from San Diego all the way over to Brownsville, I think it was. And I saw all these facilities, and they were all sitting empty. In 2017, they were all empty. I'm like, man, did we waste a lot of money here? All this capacity for incarceration, nobody's here. Well, that quickly changed when the Biden administration came in, and suddenly we couldn't house them all. And this whole migration thing started. Well, it even started under the Trump administration, coming north. And so, what we have to do, the Biden administration actually cut beds for ICE. So, yes, we need to increase the bed count. Number one, we can do soft side buildings for detention, which is cheap,
Right.
and they're portable, so you can take them down when you don't
they
need
go
them
up
any
like
longer.
that, yeah.
We use them for FEMA. People live in them for FEMA. It's certainly good enough for these illegal immigrants. So we take care of the bed space there. We get all these folks who are in the interior of the country now, start deporting them. Let's focus on the ones that, let's send the ICE agents and ERO out to get rid of the ones that we already have. We've got 1.2 million deportation orders already. Let's start with those guys. Let's start with the 300,000 kids that we don't know where they are. Let's start with that. And
The 58,000 felons
Right.
in New York City alone.
yeah, look, I think you're going to see Tom Homan just he's going to get a handle on this, and we're not going to need all those beds eventually. In the beginning, we might, but my plan would be, no, I'm not going to house them anywhere. I'm going to deport them. And these recalcitrant countries that don't want to take their people back, guess what? They get no more foreign aid. We hammer them. You want to send your imports to America, you're going to pay 100% tariff. And President Biden's already talking about that, or Trump, I mean.
I just heard him
Biden.
yesterday. They were asking him about Venezuela, and he says, they'll take them back.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to take them back.
That's right.
Messaging is a big difference. You said something I think I've said a lot too, is this was intentional. They intentionally overwhelmed and broke the system. They broke the ICE detention system. They
Right.
broke all these pieces of it. and now we've got to fix it.
Right.
They broke the court system. I mean, all of these
Right.
things have just been overwhelmed. Lack of vetting,
Right.
all of these things. Now, to be able to do a lot of what they're going to do, they're going to need, and I know you're familiar with this, the 287G program.
Oh, yes.
I see that as being a big part of it.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize there's two parts to 287G.
Right.
Do you want to dive into that?
Sure. And but before we even do that, you talked about the messaging piece, and
Yeah, I didn't finish that up.
I think what's most important about the messaging piece is we need to tell every illegal alien that has come across the border since the Biden administration, if you don't go back home right now, if we pick you up 2 months from now, let's say it's January and we're going to give you to March 31st. If you're not out of this country, if you don't self-deport and we pick you up, we're going to deport you and you will never, ever be allowed back in the United States legally. Ever. No worker permits, nothing. Let me tell you, 2/3 of these folks, I believe, will self-deport.
I agree.
So we won't have to fly them anywhere.
Yeah.
And then the others, we tell them, okay, we're coming after you. And go after those, and let's go after those ones that we know first, obviously. You know, there's like 425,000 that have serious criminal records. There's another 225,000 almost that actually have charges pending back home. What? And yet
we're doing, and
they're
we just let them
letting
walk
them
around.
into this country, and they're sending them to the interior of the country with an ankle bracelet for 2 weeks, and then they take it off. It's criminal what this administration has done.
I agree. We've seen it firsthand, and I think you bring that unique perspective, having come from the law enforcement side of it, understanding the impact it has on communities, the impact it has on your communities
Right.
in Florida.
Yeah.
The 287G, we work with ICE, but the difference that I saw under the Trump administration, if I had 10 people that were in my jail illegally, and for anybody listening, this is for people that commit crimes in our country who are here illegally. So they come to my jail, we then arrest them, they're arrested, we notify ICE, we work with ICE as a 287G
Yep.
jail. It used to be they would come pick up 8 of 10 of those people. Now they don't pick any of them up.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have to probably be a murder,
Yeah.
and even then, I'd be worried
Right.
that they wouldn't pick them up.
Let me tell you, in a hearing, I had one of the directors of CBP tell me, because I was asking about 287G, and he said, it's the best thing since sliced bread. He said, it's public safety 101. I've got a bad guy in jail. He's already been arrested and gone to jail. Then we find out, while he's incarcerated, that he's also an illegal alien up for deportation. All we have to do now is call ICE, hey, come pick the guy up. So they put a detainer on him. So when the local charges are expended, then ICE can come and pick him up and deport him. And actually, you know how 287G works, you can actually begin the deportation process before ICE even comes and picks them up. Now, we don't deport them, but we can start the process. And so...
And by the way, that's the safest place to arrest somebody.
Is while they're incarcerated.
Jail.
Amen.
Once they go back out, do you think they want to go back in jail?
No.
And it makes that a very dangerous job. And that leads me to the next question, because we're having a lot of this talk about these sanctuary cities, these sanctuary counties, sanctuary cities. I loved seeing what the San Diego Sheriff said recently when her county board said, oh, we're not going to participate. And she says, you don't tell me what I do and what I don't do.
That's why you need an elected sheriff.
Amen.
Right there.
And I loved that she did that. The news called me and they said, hey, what do you think of this? And I said, she is absolutely within her right as a sheriff. She doesn't take her marching orders from the board.
She doesn't work for them.
No, she does not. What do you see from a federal standpoint? How do you see the federal government's reaction to these places that are claiming to be these sanctuary cities and basically harboring people that came into this country illegally and broke laws?
Well, I can tell you, Sheriff, as an appropriator, those locales that want to be sanctuary cities and refuse to work with ICE, they need to be defunded. We shouldn't give them any federal money.
Good.
If you're not going to work with federal agencies, we're not going to help you with federal money. Just plain and simple. Now, I think
That's what we call common sense.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, what I want to do is I want to take their money and I want to put it into programs like Operation Stone Garden and help you all, the state and local police that are on the border dealing with this in numbers that the rest of the country can only imagine. And so Operation Stone Garden is there for us to help state and local who are actually enforcing federal immigration law. You shouldn't be paying for that. Your taxpayers should not be paying for that.
And we appreciate it because I do participate in Stone Garden.
Yeah.
For anybody listening, Stone Garden is a federal grant that Congress has appropriated to help local law enforcement cover the costs of assisting the federal government. And I have I have 3 helicopters and a plane right now. We're getting our 4th helicopter. I wouldn't be able to run those helicopters if it wasn't for Stone Garden.
Yeah.
And I actually probably spend about 80% of my flying time is with the Border Patrol, saving people
Sure.
in the desert, going after, we were flying our helicopter, and by the way, I'm going out on Thursday of this week on my helicopter, but we were flying the helicopter along the border on a Stone Garden mission, and we saw this huge group of people, and we got closer and we realized they were just coming across the border. We realized they were kids. So we land the helicopter, 53 people, 3 of them were women. Every single 50 of them were children. And those women, I think they only each had 1 child apiece. All these other children, and they ranged from little kids all the way up to teenagers. But, that's how valuable the Stone Garden mission is because there weren't any Border Patrol agents. They were busy processing people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. On a later visit to the border, I think it was the captain asked all the agents that were in the room with us, raise your hand if you've been on the wall. They call it being on the wall. That have been on the wall in the last 30 days. None of them raise their hands.
Yeah.
They're all changing diapers and feeding people and processing people, and it's ridiculous.
Every time we fly our helicopter down there, we don't see any Border Patrol agents, and we don't see any MSC trucks, which are the radar trucks that detect.
Right.
They're busy processing.
They're busy processing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about those sanctuary cities. You know what I find ironic, and I think you'll understand this too, is the same people that want to claim sanctuary cities were the same people encouraging the federal government to fight Texas and Arizona every time we tried to make an effort to protect our own states. They would say, sorry, this is a federal issue. Right. Now you have the federal government willing to do something about it. Right. Now they're saying, no, we don't want to participate.
Right.
I mean, they can't make up their mind what they want.
Yeah. Well, nobody was worried about the border until Governor DeSantis sent a group of 50 of them to Martha's Vineyard or wherever it was.
Probably the most effective busload of people throughout that entire time.
Absolutely. And it showed the hypocrisy of it because within 48 hours, they were all off that island.
Yeah. With armed military, by the way. Yeah. Can you imagine if I had a video of me putting people on a bus with armed military, what the story would have been like? Yeah. But you flip the script to where they were playing themselves off as these benevolent people that, hey, we're taking care of these folks by getting them off our island. Yeah. In 8 years as a sheriff, I never once had a single congressman or woman from the opposite side of the aisle come out to our county and take me up on my invitation to show them. Yeah. And I would have loved to have, and it would have been a great tour. I'm not adversarial to people. I want to show them and let them come up with their own mind. But I think it's disingenuous to vote on something in Washington, D.C. that you've never actually gone and put your eyes
They know
on and
nothing
seen
about
firsthand.
it.
They know
Yeah.
nothing about it.
Yeah.
So, and you can see with some of these numbers we've talked about, hundreds of billions of dollars that it costs the taxpayers, cost the state of
lives.
Florida alone.
And lives.
And resources, and the list
Right.
goes on and on.
Yep.
Well, we appreciate you being here today. I mean, Sheriff, this has
Thank
been
you, Sheriff. It's
Congressman Sheriff.
great to be with you.
And I just, I think that you are exactly, you have the right mindset, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Congress gets done with this next few years, next administration. Hopefully Congress stays on with it for the full 4 years. Anything you'd like to say to your supporters? Anything you want to add on
Well,
here?
let me first let me throw an invitation to you. Myself and Josh Geinheimer from across the aisle. He's from New Jersey. We co-chair the Law Enforcement Caucus in Congress, in the House, and an invitation to you. Anytime you come, and love to come and have you talk to our caucus.
I would love it.
About issues
I'd be honored.
of the day, which obviously the border is right now. But that's one reason we're so excited. There's so many opportunities that are going to be coming with this unified government that we can actually turn this back around. We can truly get America back on track, implement some of those things, deal with the remittances, create real vetting at the border, stop, catch, and release, bring back Title 42, bring back MPP,
Defund the cartels.
Defund the cartels. Defund these cartels.
I know.
Remittances are where it's at.
Yeah, most Americans don't realize, they think of these cartels as these little operations on the southern end of our country.
Yeah.
And reality is because of the strength that they've built over the last 4 years, and large in part because of the human trafficking,
Right.
they became cash rich. People were showing up to the border with cash in hand, and they went from making $500 million to $13 billion a year. But not only that, they're now in 54 different countries. These are global, transnational criminal organizations, and only America has the ability to crush them.
Right.
And if we don't start, we cannot intentionally do the opposite and put them in a better position. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys are able to do.
Amen.
And anything else for the folks in Florida? Just
it's an honor to serve, as you know.
Yes.
And I look forward to some great things going forward.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Sheriff.
And I hope to come up and be part of your caucus, and
Please do.
would love to maybe in 6 months to a year get you back on the podcast, and let's see where things are at.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you go to fairus.org. Donate today. This is how we keep this information coming to you. But thank you, everybody, and God bless, and Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.